This is Carl Moore talking management for the Globe and Mail. Today I'm delighted to speak to Ranjay Gulati, who's a professor at the Harvard Business School. Good afternoon, Ranjay.
Good afternoon, Carl.
Ranjay, when we look at it, one of the things we're looking for is high growth, particularly in large firms. This is a huge challenge. What have you learned about high growth, particularly in larger firms?
In particular, I think it's important to separate out organic growth from inorganic growth. Because inorganic growth through acquisitions is kind of an age-old proposition which is in the hip pocket of the toolkit of most CEOs. The challenge, however, is organic growth, and organic growth driven profitably. How do I drive growth profitably become the challenge. And one of the key challenges that many businesses, not all businesses face, is how do you do that in markets that are becoming more competitive, more commoditized, if you will, because customers have more choices and more information. Whether it's global competition or even local competition. So you have a customer base who has more choices, has more information. You are trying to sell into that market. They are now driving down your prices, so there's a pressure on price, which puts pressure on your margins. And here you are trying to actually grow your business in a profitable way. That becomes a huge challenge in organizations. And this is something I have been looking at actually for the last decade. I started by looking at it in recessions, which is in the 2000 recession, the 2008 recession, but I've come to realize this is a systemic issue today in organizations as we operate in a more globally connected world.
Absolutely, tremendously important. What are some of the practical management lessons you could pass on to C-suite executives?
It's interesting, in tackling these issues of trying to drive profitable growth, I think in some cases it is going back to business fundamentals. And the business fundamentals that I have found, one of them that is kind of a key imperative is how do I become more aligned and centric around my customers? It's about where you define yourself around your customers and problems. And so the focus shifts from how can I create only unique products that I can push out the door to how can I engage my customers in meaningful conversations. Now I will use those conversations to create innovative products, to create innovative services, but my emphasis has shifted. And it sounds like the same thing, but it's actually different. To start what I call inside out, which is product first, to outside in, which is customer first, are two very different ways of thinking.
So how do you actually go about doing this?
So now you ask the real question, which is, how do you go from rhetoric to reality? And I think this is a tricky issue because in this, whenever you're working around a thing that is obvious, it's a platitude, it's like who's going to disagree with customer centricity? It's really hard to turn that rhetoric into action, and it's really tempting and seductive to fall into the trap of doing a lot of rhetoric and hope it leads to action. And I think the challenge I found is that people start out by thinking, oh, the problem is I don't know my customers or my markets. It's an external issue. I need to do CRM or I need to hire more marketing professionals. And I've come to realize the problem is actually much more internal. The way organizations are structured, the way they are incented, the way they are managed. If you look at the way most organizations are oriented, they're oriented around product, geography, and function. And somehow in these three orientations or axes or anchors, customer kind of gets lost. So if I'm oriented around geography or product or function, I tend to not really understand. So the internal action that is happening is not optimized around what customers really want. So something as obvious as the fact that a business should be there to serve and solve customer problems doesn't happen.